One of my late friends, a guy called Jonathan Perkins, JP, was in a band called XTC, although he left just before they became massive. Because you remember, they had a song called Making Plans for Nigel, and can you see where this is going? But yeah, it's all about that photograph of that T-shirt. But I'm not going to talk about the sort of issues as to whether the photograph itself or the T-shirt is an offence, or publishing it was an offence, or sharing, or anything like that, because we've now heard that the person who took the actual photograph is now invoicing the people who used it. Specifically, he wants to invoice Nigel Farage for using that photograph. So can he? Well, the short answer is yes, he almost certainly can. So I think what I need to do is explain a little bit about copyrighting photographs, and then something called fair dealing. I mean, you quite often get people saying, oh, it's all fair use. Well, fair use is an American concept. In England and Wales, we have fair dealing. And it's probably fair to say that the major difference is the fair use doctrine is sort of more broad strokes. It's more about the principles, whereas fair dealing has certain categories of exceptions to copyright, but those categories are quite narrow, and you have to sort of fall into one of them for the exception to apply. So it's a little bit more rigid rather than the sort of flexibility you might get in the US system, although fundamentally it's not that dissimilar. But first of all, copyright. Copyright exists when you use your sort of creative talents to produce something. It's a fascinating topic in its own right, because it's what can attract copyright. There has to be some sort of creative element in it. I mean, the classic example is if you're designing furniture. Say you design a chair. Can you stop somebody ripping off your design? Well, weirdly, it all depends on how functional it is, because you can't get any intellectual property in things that are just essential. So the fact that a chair needs some legs and a back and something to sit on, then if you really want to copyright a chair, you pretty much have to make it as impractical as possible. So it's a work of art rather than a functional piece of furniture. There's a very interesting case where somebody was going for copyright in a lamp. And in the end, the courts decided they could have the copyright in the base of the lamp, because that was all very pretty, but they couldn't have the copyright in the top of the lamp, because basically that was just somewhere where you screwed a bulb in and you flicked a switch, and that was just necessary for it to be a lamp. But generally speaking, obviously, photographs are, a sort of creative endeavour. So they do attract copyright. You don't have to claim copyright or anything. As soon as you create the work, you have the copyright in it. You can get a little bit of extra protection by using your little copyright symbols and things like that. Also, you have certain what we call moral rights. Now, interesting, moral rights cannot be assigned. General copyright, you can sell it, you can assign it, you can license it, you can let somebody else sort of exploit your work for profit. You can do a deal with them. But the moral rights always belong to the artist. And that's like things like being, attributed, the work being attributed to them, the work not being manipulated in a way that is disparaging or used in a way that is disparaging to them. Although, again, that gets quite complicated, because you can take art, you can do something to it, and if it's sufficiently transformative, if you've done something that has changed it, then you actually create your own fresh copyright in the work. But that's perhaps a topic for another time. And I've done some sort of videos on this. I mean, go look at all the Warhol Foundation stuff and all the sort of pictures of prints and things like that. But in this particular case, a photograph has copyright. So what if you want to use it? Is there any fair dealing exceptions? Well, no. I mean, there are for everything except photographs. So say, for instance, you wanted to comment on a news story about, something like a riot or something, and there's some footage floating around. Well, arguably, you could then use that footage and say, I'm using this footage to comment on, the actual activities. You should always, if you can, credit the person who the copyright belongs to. I mean, sometimes that's not practical, you just don't know, but that's what you're supposed to do. But when it comes to photographs, there is a specific exception that photographs, when it comes, do not fall within the commenting on criticism, review and reporting current events. Photographs are explicitly excluded. And the reason for that is, it's just that basically newspapers could write a story and go, we need a photograph to illustrate this. Just go on like our rival newspaper's website and download a nice high-res photograph for us. So that's the principle there. So yeah, so this guy, he took the photograph. He owns the copyright in it. Nobody's transformed it or anything. People have just published it there. And we'll come on in a moment because there's another interesting thing about the actual underlying copyright in the T-shirts. So there's no dispute that this guy who took the photograph has IP. But what about the guy who actually designed the T-shirt or girl? We'll come on to that momentarily. But in this particular case, yep, he can say it's my copyright and you have used it. Now, what are his damages? What's his remedy? Because there are three ways of calculating this. Now, let's say that a newspaper, the standard way is that if a newspaper sort of trolls social media or something and just swipes a photograph, like you've posted a newsworthy photograph on your Facebook page and one of the newspapers swipes it, if you actually write to them or just email and say, oh, you've used my photograph and I can prove it's my photograph, they will pay you straight away. They won't argue about it. And they'll use the standard tariffs for photographers. There is just like there's like a sort of rate for photographs. I mean, obviously there's some flexibility in there because obviously, a standard paparazzi snap of some C-list celebrity isn't going to be worth as much as, you're the person who sort of caught some fantastically newsworthy event. So there's room for negotiation, but most people just go, okay, that's great. I've put my photograph on Facebook, but now the newspapers are each going to give me 300 quid for it. Fantastic. However, the licensing fee is just one potential element of damage. So you can say, I'm going to sue you. I normally charge people this rate for using my photographs. I'm going to sue you. And I want basically what I would have charged if you'd asked me for this. But there are two other heads of damage. You can sue for loss of profit. So you can say, had I exploited this photograph myself, I would have made all this money on it. And the mere fact that you've put it out there has diluted that now, and my photograph isn't worth as much to me. So you can effectively sue for the potential loss of profits because somebody else has used your photograph, even if they haven't themselves profited on it. The mere fact they've distributed it weakens, sort of dilutes your product, as it were. So you can claim the damages there. I mean, obviously, how you calculate these is another factor. But the other thing you can do is, if somebody has used your work and actually made money on it, then you can also sue them for the money that they made. Well, I say also, you've got to choose one of the three because you can't get double or triple recovery. So you have to pick. And generally speaking, you'll pick the one that gives you the most money. So if somebody has sold your photograph and made tens of thousands on the back of it, you might just sue for that. If, however, you can show that you would have made loads of money by selling it to the newspapers and now you can't because it's all out there, then you can sue for that. And again, you're sort of calculating a loss of a chance almost. So it becomes a bit of an exercise, but courts do this all the time. Or you can just do the simple thing and sue for the regular license fee that you would have charged. So yeah, so this guy, it seems a fairly slam dunk one, really. I mean, if he just invoices people and says, you used my photograph without my consent, pay up, then they'll probably have to do that. What about, though, the actual T-shirt itself? Because there's a design on there. Some work has gone into it. So arguably that attracts its own copyright. In this particular case, I think for the person who actually did the T-shirt, it might be more difficult because then it is a case of, we are reporting and we need to show this image to put the reporting in context. We are saying that this image, people are arguing, this image crosses a line. Oh, it breaches the Malicious Prosecutions Act, or it breaches the Serious Crimes Act 2007. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. Well, how do you decide that? Well, you need to see what the image is, don't you? So the argument there is that I think for the person who did the T-shirt, it's probably harder for them because there would be a sort of fair dealing provision. And generally speaking, like I say, with fair dealing, it's all things like if you're reviewing a movie, there are sort of crude sort of time analyses. It's like, well, you used your video, 90% of it is copyrighted material and only 10% of it is you talking about the material, might not count as fair dealing. Your video is 10% of it is you are showing copyrighted material, but 90% of it is you talking about the copyrighted material, probably okay. But with something like this, I mean, if you leave the photograph, up all the time when you're talking, is that any different from sort of going, here's the video that's, here's the T-shirt that's in question, let's talk about it and let's keep flashing back to it to show it. But I personally think you could probably get away with just having an image of the T-shirt up and just talking about it. I mean, I've not used the image. I'll pretend that's for sort of like, you know, copyright reasons or something like that, rather than just really lazy. Because I'm in the middle of tons and tons of work, so I'm sat literally at my kitchen table, just knocking out a quick video for you. But yeah, I mean, I just thought you might find, as always, that vaguely informative, vaguely interesting, and vaguely accurate. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, because like I say, if this guy sends invoices out, I think people have to pay them, because I think actually he or she or they actually have a really, really good you know, copyright claim, because it's their photograph. It was just reproduced. It wasn't manipulated or transformed in any way. And like I say, whilst normally there is an exception in fair dealing for reporting on current events, photographs are explicitly excluded. So there you go, mate. Good luck to you. Because I mean, theoretically, they could probably go after everybody who's ever reproduced the photograph. So yeah, they could be quids in. I mean, I don't think that's why they're doing it. I think they're doing it more to prove a point than. But you know, I mean, the person is apparently a professional photographer, so why should they not be rewarded for their work? You know, I know we live in these interesting times where everything's, oh, it's on the internet, so it must be free. But no. No, it's not. Mind you, I'm also from the age where if you actually bought something like a piece of music, you got to keep it forever. You weren't just renting it until the person you were renting off it decided that you'd had it long enough. Remember that home taping is killing music. You know, we're all sort of sat there waiting for John Peel to shut up about, you know, whatever rambling he's doing, just so you can like record the actual song. I don't know. The youth of today don't know they're born.